let's start with your book, Born on a Blue Day. You already told in the beginning. You were born on a blue day. Why is Wednesday? You were born on a Wednesday. Why is it blue?
I don't know. It's always been blue for me. Something to do with how my brain is wired slightly differently, meaning that I make connections between different stimuli in a way that perhaps others don't, although you don't have to be autistic to experience days of the week or words or numbers in colours, for example. It's called synesthesia, and it's something that happens in maybe 1 in 100 people. And since writing the book, I've received much correspondence, and some of the letters and emails I've received have been from people with synesthesia, and some of them saying, yes, we understand and we agree with you, Wednesday is blue. And
yeah, but there's not a general agreement.
And sometimes sometimes there are people who write and are quite annoyed that Wednesdays are blue because for them it's a different colour.
Because Wednesday is white.
Wednesday is white, you should know that.
Okay, may I just ask you a question? This is my birth date.
Yes.
So what day was I born?
You were born on a Thursday.
That's right. And what colour is this Thursday?
Thursday is yellow.
Yellow.
Yes, like a very bitty yellow, like I'm trying to imagine how you would describe the texture. It's like a rough texture, like wood cut, but the colour is yellow.
Colour is yellow. Do you then also by coincidence or by know how many days I am? How old? If I was born on the 1st of September 1955 and now it is the 23rd of
September, I don't know. No.
Anyhow, you might ever do a small test.
Sure.
Just to, could you say if this is a prime?
I can't be sure, but I would say it probably is, yes.
It says yes. Well, you are especially very good in remembering digits. I mean, you did 22,000.
Yes.
Oh, how much?
540.
540, right. I couldn't even just recall this amount. There was a scientist, psychologist, George Miller, and he showed that after looking for 10 seconds at a row of digits, most people could recall only 7. I mean, that's almost the most. Some people could recall just 2 more, others 2 less. You can recall many more, I mean 22,000, but I show you 10 seconds, okay. A row of digits, okay. And then afterwards I ask you to look okay. At the audience and then try to recall them. Just, there we go. Well, it's a long 10 seconds. So would you mind turning your head and try to recall them?
2, 4, 5, 7, 6, 3, 4, 5, 3, 3, 2, 4, 7, 6, 7.
That's great. And now you see them in your head. Mm-hmm. Can you recall them backwards?
7, 6, 7, 2, 3, 3, 5, 4, 3, 6. 7, 5, 4, 2.
Yeah, well, you missed 1. Oh. But it's amazing. I think it's amazing. Well, how do you recall them? I mean, you just see them in your head? Do they become colors as well, or what?
Yes, and also I understand them. I mean, 2, 4, 5, 7 is almost the first 4 prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7. The last 3 digits, 7, 6, 7, is 13 times 59. So I can visualize that very easily.
That's quite easy for us as well, as you hear.
332 is a nice green number, and I like the color green. And 63 and 45, they're both divisible by 7.
Yeah, it sounds very logical.
Or well, by 9 rather, 63 by 7 and 45 by 9. 9 by 7 and 9 by 5.
I'm amazed. There's another thing. I just, because you were recalling this story, which is actually not true, about the toothpicks in this film Rain Man, I found another thing actually. And I was you've never done this, I think. It's just research, my personal research. So if you fail, it's not a test, it's just, I was interested in actually. There has been done some research that people can count the maximum of 4, the amount of letters in a word. So I was actually interested in if you could, this quadridimensionality, if you could just count them by head, how many letters it is?
20.
That's amazing. It's less than 3 seconds. Actually, I couldn't even measure it. I mean, it's a very, very not scientific experiment, this one. So, no, thank you. You mind if we do another one, a longer one?
Okay.
Just, let's make it more scientific. Is there anyone with a stopwatch? Well, anyhow, just try. There it comes. It's a word from Mary Poppins. I don't know if you know it.
Oh, okay.
There it comes, 1, 2. The last word it is.
$35.
It's amazing. It's less than 6 seconds actually. Well, but anyhow, normal people would do it in 8.75 seconds. I hope. I couldn't even do it because I somewhere in halfway I was just lose the track and start over again. So it took me about 20 seconds, I think. Anyhow, numbers are your friends.
Yes.
And they were your friends because, would you mind if you just would read a part? I mean, I found it very typical for how you feel as a child with Asperger, with autistic feeling. Would you mind reading a part of your book?
Sometimes other children in the class would try to talk to me. I say try because it was difficult for me to interact with them. For one thing, I did not know what to do or say. I almost always looked down at the floor as I spoke and did not think to try to make eye contact. If I did look up, I would look at the other person's mouth as it moved while they were speaking. Sometimes a teacher speaking to me would ask me to look him in the eye. Then I would bring my head up and look at him, but it took a lot of willpower and felt strange and uncomfortable. When I talked to someone, it was often in a long, unbroken sequence of words. The idea of pausing or of taking turns in a conversation just did not occur to me. I was never purposefully impolite. I did not understand that the purpose of conversation was anything other than to talk about the things that most interested you. I would talk in very great detail until I'd emptied myself of everything that I wanted to say and felt that I might burst if I was interrupted in mid-flow. It never occurred to me that the topic I was talking about might not be of interest to the other person. I also never noticed if the listener began to fidget or look around and would carry on talking until I was told something like, I have to go now. Listening to other people is not easy for me. When someone is speaking to me, it often feels like I'm trying to tune into a particular radio station, and a lot of what is said just passes in and out of my head like static. Over time, I've learned to pick out enough to understand most of what is being talked about, but it can be problematic when I'm being asked a question and I don't hear it. Then the questioner can sometimes get annoyed with me, which makes me feel bad.
It sounds as a complete different person than I saw here when you're giving this lecture or as I see here.
I think I would love to be able to say to people there is a magic cure. And if everyone does exactly the same thing, that they will be able to lead a pretty normal life in spite of their Asperger's or autism or whatever it would be. But there isn't any such cure. For me, it was just a great desire within myself from an early age to fit into the world around me and to try to have a happy life. And to do that, I knew that I needed to learn those things, conversational skills and being able to relate to other people enough to be able to do that. I feel now happy, most because, in a sense, I have dual nationality in two countries of the mind. I don't have to choose one or the other. I belong to both the world of people and the world of numbers.
You were telling that in this period, the only friends you had were numbers.
Yes, as a young child, up until about the age of 8 or 9. Because up until that age, I had no sense of other people as having emotions and feelings and thoughts and ideas like I had. And so the things that made sense to me were numbers. People made no sense to me at all.
And what did you do with those numbers?
I would play with them in my head. I would watch them. They would have, they had shapes and they would do things together. One number would join with another number and form another number. They would flow or trickle or jump or spin, and I would be fascinated by them.
But you really played?
Yes, essentially I played with them in the same way that children play with other children. I would play with the numbers.
And it also sounds that you were sort of not able to look inside the heads of other people. I mean, for us, sort of, I talk for us and you, but anyhow, it seems logical that somebody has an expression you think, oh, I think I should stop talking because, but that's something you didn't experience then.
No, I just didn't have the awareness to know that people had those emotions, even though I knew that I had those emotions. I didn't understand, I couldn't appreciate that I had no awareness that other people had those same emotions. It took me a long time to realise that, and it happened gradually. It wasn't anything sudden. It was very small, gradual steps. One of the anecdotes that I describe in the book is about the age of 8 or 9, when, having had that experience of loneliness and wanting to make friends, I still wasn't yet at the age where I was able to do that, to have the social confidence and skills enough to make friends with other children. And so I had imaginary friends. And one in particular I describe in the book as someone who was very important to me. I had very detailed, long conversations with her as I walked in the playground at school, and felt very close to this particular person, this person, until one day she said to me that she was dying, and subsequently disappeared forever. And I realised much later, even as I was writing the book, that what I had been able to do was personalise my own loneliness and make a friend of it. And by letting go of her, I was, making a decision that I would push myself very hard and break past those things that held me back and start to make friends with other people.
But she was in fact your first friend?
She was in fact my first friend, yes, very, very close to me. I mean, I remember her to this day.
So you were, not only using numbers as friends, but you also had particular habits, like if there was a lot of noise?
Yes, if there was a lot of noise, I would put my fingers in my ears. I would run away sometimes if I was just overwhelmed by noise. I had very high sensitivity to noise, which I still have to some extent to this day, but it's not as acute, fortunately, because as a child it was very acute.
Yeah, it was very, very acute.
Yes. I mean, to give an example, if a balloon burst, it would be incredibly painful for me. I mean, just like being punched or something. It was just a real physical sensation, very uncomfortable one. If someone was brushing their teeth, the noise of the teeth, the toothbrush, the scratchy noise.
You couldn't brush your teeth because of the noise?
Yeah, I found it very difficult to brush my teeth because the noise was incredibly painful for me, and I had to learn to put cotton wool in my ears to cope with the noise.
But then still the noise is there from the inside, or that doesn't bother?
It wasn't the same noise, it was the texture. It's hard to explain, but it was the texture of the noise. The scratchy noise, yes, the scratchy texture. And the cotton wool seemed to take that away.
But the world is full of noise. I mean, wherever you go.
And as a consequence, I spent a lot of time at home, because home was like an oasis. And I always felt calm and comfortable there, because my family understood me and knew to make very little noise, and And even to this day, I travel widely now, but very often when I go home, it's I spend a lot of time at home because I live in a part of England which is very quiet. We have fruit trees and horses nearby. I mean, it's a rural community. There aren't a lot of cars. There isn't a lot of noise.
You still don't like supermarkets?
I still don't like supermarkets, no, because they're so big. And there's too much information, too many people, too much going on, and it's kind of like overload. It's overwhelming for me, so I always shop in small local shops.
You must have been teased with those things very often.
Yes, I did get bullied, unfortunately, as many people get bullied when they're not like everyone else. Children have a real instinct for knowing when you're different from them, and can be incredibly cruel and vindictive as a consequence. But the thing that I think saved me was that, being so unusual, the bullies didn't really know how to tease me. They would come up to me and I would react by putting my fingers in my ears, sitting down and counting to myself. And they couldn't really bully me after this, because how can you bully someone who isn't responding to your bullying?
Like, we're sitting there as a real autist.
Absolutely, they got bored and walked away.
And then
so it's the perfect...
It wasn't fun teasing you, actually. Yeah. Fear is a very important emotion in people with Asperger, but especially people also with autism. You seem to have sort of chosen to overcome this fear, which is very difficult, I think.
It's incredibly difficult. And I still have this experience to this day. There are sometimes social situations and other experiences that I just can't do, or that I find incredibly difficult, incredibly stressful to do. But very often I do them anyway, because I realise it's part and parcel of being part of the human experience, being part of this world. And I learn much more by doing these experiences, by pushing myself. I'm going to Lithuania and doing all these things.
Yeah, and actually this moment you were choosing to do those 22... See, I already forgot this number.
22,514.
Thank you very much. Recalling those digits, why did you do that? I mean, it must have been a huge step, actually.
It was a challenge. It wasn't actually, for me, very difficult to remember the numbers. It was more difficult to recite them in front of an audience, because it was a public event. It was advertised in the London Times. A lot of people came to watch me as I recited them. And some people burst into tears, actually, as they watched me, because they said afterwards that it was a spiritual experience for them. It was like someone reciting.
I must imagine, yes, somebody reciting so many digits, and it's almost a mantra or something.
So it was a very special experience, and in a way I was bringing people into my world. For those few hours, people could feel that they were participating in something that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to access. And
but what made you do it?
I had the motivation. Well, first of all, I was raising money and awareness for an important charity, and very close to my heart. And also, it was wanting
for autism. It was for a
epilepsy charity. And also, I wanted to do something that gave myself a sense of personal achievement, because I do sometimes find it hard to experience particular emotions, and I find it hard to experience the emotion of pride. In all that I've been able to do, I find it very hard to feel proud, and I needed to do something that involved numbers to give me that sense of pride. And reciting this number, which I love very much, and taking it as far as I could in the few weeks that I studied it, at the end of that, I felt pride. And I felt pride at doing that. I also felt pride at all that I'd been able to do in reaching that point in my life, because it wasn't only the recitation, it was being able to sit or stand in front of many people whilst doing that, having the social skills and the confidence enough to do that. And to have reached that point was amazing for me, and this recitation and the end of it gave me the chance to reach that point and feel that pride for the first time in my life. And then, having recited all those numbers, in my mind's eye, I turned around and I could see all of them in my head, all 22,500 digits in my head, and I waved them goodbye, because I knew that I would never do that again. I would never go to that place in my mind ever again. And it was a very emotional experience, and like climbing Mount Everest. and looking out at the top.
It's interesting because you also told me that actually numbers are your friends, but you got new friends.
They are still my friends, but they're not my only friends. I have many people in my life that are very close to me, that understand me. They don't play cards, they don't play chess with me, but we do other things instead, and we have a lot of fun.
Let me just, because one very important thing you also stated that in your lecture is you fall in love, you get a friend, and it's a very difficult emotion. I mean, and you have to communicate, and you describe in your book the problem with it. Can you just recall that?
Sure. Conversations can be problematic between us because of the auditory processing difficulties I sometimes experience. Neil will say something to me to which I will nod or say yes or okay, but then later I will realise I haven't understood what he said. It can be very frustrating for him to spend time explaining or recounting something important to me, only to find afterwards I haven't taken it in. The problem is that I don't realise I'm not hearing what he's saying. I very often hear fragments of each sentence which my brain automatically pulls together to try to make sense of. By missing key words, however, I quite often don't get the real content of what's being said. Nodding and saying things like okay when someone's speaking to me has evolved over time as my way of allowing communication between me and someone else to flow normally without the other person needing to stop and repeat continuously. Though the tactic works for me most of the time, I now realise it's not appropriate within a relationship. Instead, Neil and I have learned to persevere when we talk together. I give my fullest attention to him when he's speaking to me and signal if there's a word or words that need to be repeated. That way, we can both be sure each of us understands the other fully.
Needs a lot of patience for each other.
Yes, a lot of patience, and I'm very lucky. I consider myself, in spite of all the difficulties that I've had in my life, incredibly blessed because I have someone who loves me very much. I have friends, I have family, I have a career, I have things that fill my mind and with colour and beauty and joy. And part of what I do in giving talks like this and writing books like this is to share some of that colour and some of that happiness with other people. I hope that the emotion that people have in reading my book is appreciation, but also happiness. I hope within those pages they find a real sense of happiness, because that's what I wanted to communicate most of all, that to be different isn't to be condemned to an unhappy life.
Well, of course, I've got only one question, and that one you can't answer, and that is in what sense is your brain different from mine? But we can just try to generalize a little bit about the ideas about autism, Asperger, and Savant syndrome. Because about your brain very little is known, if anything. And let's start at the beginning. Some 30 years ago, friends of us got a child, and it was the child was different. And after some years, the diagnosis came. It was autism, and they didn't only say it was autism, but they also said, and it is due to the type of education you are giving them. And that went back, of course, to the first description of autism by Kenner. And the fitular mother, the ice-cold mother, that was the cause of autism. What's your opinion about, let's say, the environment and autism?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and it is a view that was, as you say, prevalent in the scientific community and elsewhere. Many years ago, that autism was caused by mothers who weren't emotional enough with their children, who didn't spend enough time with their child. My understanding is that science has long ago rejected this view, and that there are very many good reasons for doing so, such as the very strong evidence that autism is genetic, that occurs because of genetic reasons. long before the child is actually born, even whilst it's still in the womb.
And in fact, in your family, there is quite some evidence for that.
Yes, there is a lot of genetic evidence. I describe in the book my grandfather, my father's father, who had epilepsy, as I had as a small child. My father, his son, has several mental problems, including schizophrenia.
You don't describe that in the book, do you?
I don't go into a lot of detail about my father's condition because there is a lot of stigma attached to mental illness, certainly in the UK and in the West in general.
But there's also a lot of stigma for autism and asperger's.
Yes, there is.
And you try to break that, so yes. It's not very consequent, is it?
No, that's true. But my feeling as well was that I would very much love my father to write a book himself one day if he is able to, because he has a remarkable mind of his own, which unfortunately his illness has overwhelmed. But I always feel lucky because I have his mind, in a sense. I feel that I've inherited his mind without that level of disability which has prevented him from using his mind. So there's a part of me that feels a lot of responsibility in a way to want to make the most of this gift, because my father couldn't do so. My grandfather, because his epilepsy was so severe that he was put in an institution at a time when there weren't cures, there weren't medications available for epilepsy.
Do you know whether he had any special talents, your grandfather?
I don't know, and I don't know that it would be possible to find out. We have very little information about my family tree at this time. It may be something we can look back at. Unfortunately, like a lot of families, mine in previous generations wasn't a very close one necessarily, so it would be difficult to get a lot of reliable information.
And then there's your brother, Stephen.
Yes, I have a younger brother who also has a diagnosis of Asperger's, and he also has this ability to see colours and different things. His love is music, and he's taught himself to play various instruments. And so when he plays music to himself, if he feels happy doing so, he'll see the colour orange, and then he knows he's really happy. So there is definitely this genetic link.
It's all in the male line.
It's all in the male line. There's no instance of it at all. And I have 5 sisters, and they're all very smart, and they're certainly very, very gifted in some sense, but none of them have any sort of condition relating to the brain.
Savant syndrome is 6 times more prevalent in males than in females, and autism 4 times. So it's there's something in testosterone which is influencing brain development in this way. And in Cambridge, in Oxford, Baron Cohen even says that you can consider autism to be an extreme form of male development, being focused and not very social. I recognize that. That's,
many men do recognize that.
And then you said it already, a genetic component is very important both for autism and for the Savant syndrome. Do you have any idea about your genetic makeup? Have you ever collaborated in genetic research in order to find out which small alterations in DNA might be responsible for your gifts?
I haven't yet, no. I think I would need to persuade some of my other family members. I think it would be best if as a family we were to do those tests, and I think that will take a bit of persuasion, because a lot of people, when you say to them, the scientists want to take some of your DNA, and their immediate reaction is, oh, I don't know, my DNA is my DNA, I don't want to give it away. So, but yes, hopefully in the future we will be able to do those tests as well.
So we had the genetic component and not the mother. Birth was normal. And then after that, at the age of 3, you got epileptic problems for 3 years.
Yes, for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I had very severe seizures, which my father recognised because his father, as I mentioned, had epilepsy. And so his reactions basically saved my life because he reacted very quickly, was able to take me to the hospital. And they resuscitated me because one of the seizures was status epilepticus, which is where the seizure is prolonged, it doesn't stop. Most seizures only occur for a few minutes, but this one just went on, and had it not been for medical intervention very quickly, I would have, I'd already stopped breathing, so I would have unfortunately died. So I find it quite difficult if someone touches me lightly, if someone strokes me, or if someone brushes past me, then that can be uncomfortable. Whereas if I hold someone's hand, if someone holds me or I hold them, if there's a pressure applied, then it's comforting. It's the opposite reaction. And I have been told, you can tell me whether this is correct or not, that it's because of the brain and the fact that if you stroke someone's skin lightly, it's a different part of the brain that's activated to if you squeeze them.
Yeah.
And for an autistic person, the squeezing motion is comforting, but the delicate touch is uncomfortable.
You told in your book that you had the temporal lobe epilepsia, and also that quite a number of famous people had the same story. Dostoevsky, you mentioned in your book, as somebody who was writing about the details of the experience. You also told in your book that you became religious. Are you the only one in the family?
Yes, I didn't. I should make it clear that I became religious quite recently, about 5 years ago. I'm a Christian, and it's another thing that people are often surprised about, that an autistic person can believe in something that you can't see or touch or understand in that very tangible way. And I am the only one in the family. My parents aren't religious, nor are my brothers and sisters. It's possible that my brain has played a role in why I've become religious, although obviously I can't know that for sure myself, and I think it would be hard to test in any event. I read many books when I was growing up by an author in England, an English author, called Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton, who's quite famous in Britain, who, reading about his life, may also have been on the autistic spectrum himself. He had a very unusual life, was a very talented man, had an amazing mind, amazing memory for details, and wrote about his own journey into faith, and also coming from a family which didn't have any religion, and finding a belief in God, and reading all of this in the way that he wrote it was something that allowed me over many years to reach a point where I said, yes, I can see this, I can understand it.
Mm-hmm. And how do you envisage God?
I like the concept in Christianity, which is of God as made out of relationship. He is the living and breathing relationship. Christians talk about the Trinity, the Father, Son and the Spirit. And I think of God as relationship, as love. I mean, the Bible says that God is love.
But do you envisage him as a person, or?
Well, of course, as a Christian, I understand Jesus as having, as being God, as having lived a human life, as both man and God simultaneously. But primarily, I understand God as love, and as love being the most important thing. And so, for me, to love somebody and to be loved is much more important than being good at exams or being good at numbers or chess or something. To love is, I think, the test of being human. If you live your life and you ask yourself, will the world miss me? Will people shed a tear when I pass away? Then I think that's a very good way of evaluating the life that you're living.
Does he have a color?
God, the word God has a colour, yes. It's a green colour.
Green?
Yes. But God himself I would picture as kind of like the number 1 maybe, which is a beautiful, bright light, shining light, just full of every colour.
Is it correct that the smallest numbers have the brightest appearance?
Yes, I think so. Number 1 is the brightest number for me, and if you go through the numbers from 1 to 9, then 9 is the darkest and a very dark blue number. It's also a pretty huge number. When I meet somebody who's very tall, for example, I will immediately recognise the number 9.
Yes, this morning.
Yes, this morning we met a photographer who was very tall, and I immediately said, "Oh, you're the number 9."
What number am I today?
Because of the stripes in your clothing, you're the number 252.
What number am I?
Well, you look, the number 8, I would say, the number 8, because the number 8 is blue and you're wearing blue, and it also has lots of round circles in it, and you've been moving around a lot today, you've been very busy, and it's like a very busy number, the number 8.
That's right.
I have done many talks where I've met people, parents of autistic children, and autistic people themselves, people with Asperger's themselves, young and older, and they're often very high functioning, and the difficulty that they have is not so much the nature of their disability, but people's reaction to them, because in society we value people who conform to society, who conform to rules. Our brains are wired, our brains evolved over time to be most comfortable with things happening in a very particular way, and when people break those norms, then people can have prejudice against them. And
you have to be at time in your job, isn't it? You have to be there exactly the same time every day, and that's the start of the problem.
yes, and
You should be there.
yes, exactly. It's very difficult for people with Asperger's to fit into society for those reasons, but it is possible, as I show and as others I'm sure have shown and will continue to show in the future, that people with autism want to be part of society, very keenly feel the need to belong to society and to contribute to it. And if you give them the chance, then they will do amazing things. And it's not only in intellectual areas, but in others as well. You will have autistic athletes, because if you give an autistic person a javelin, for example, and ask them to throw it as far as they can, you can be sure that with enough practice they will throw it far, because they will persevere and persevere and practice and practice. They will understand the exact dynamics of how to throw a javelin and how to move their body in just such a way. And you will have an Olympic champion one day if you give them the javelin in the first place.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is said about savant talents, that part of it is the practicing, continuous practicing from childhood onwards. Do you feel that's an important part of your talent too?
Yes, it's not conscious practicing specifically. I mean,
you feel better when you do it, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, and so it's something I enjoy doing, and it's something I'm more likely to do because I enjoy doing it, because when I look at numbers, as I looked at those numbers earlier, I enjoy looking at them. I get like a pins and needles, we say in English, sort of excitement from looking at the numbers, and the same with words as well, with language, when I look at a new language.
And you still feel that you're improving your capabilities?
Yes, I think I am, and I think what's also interesting is I'm diversifying. I'm able to do other things, so I've been able to paint. I did a painting which people have bought prints of through my website.
What are you painting?
The number pi, because I see it as a landscape, and I've painted the first 20 digits of pi as a landscape as I see it in my head. And I also write poetry, which again people are often surprised by, the idea that someone with autism can write poetry, but I write poetry, and people have told me I write good poetry. So, and perhaps because of my synesthesia, because I'm able to make those connections between different things, which maybe that's all poetry is, laboured synesthesia.